And we're back. It is Car Con Carne here in quarantine, episode number 517, all told. Quarantine Con Carne, sponsored in part tonight by our friends at Byron's Hot Dogs, who are giving up $50 worth of hot dogs and delights and French fries. They have Green River on tap at the restaurants. A $50 gift card is at stake. All you have to do is join the Car Con Carne mailing list through carconcarne.com. Me, I'm James Van Osdell. Him, well, that's Jason Dummeldinger. He is a producer, a director, a movie mogul, waiting to happen with the movie The Baseball Furies. This is a documentary about that intersection. Maybe a lot of people aren't aware of this intersection between baseball and rock and roll. The Baseball Furies, which obviously you got the name from the Warriors.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is one of the seminal movies of my childhood.
Oh, absolutely. It's right there, and it just made so much sense, really. Going back to like the beginnings of this, I was on tour with my band, Red Eyed Legends. This is in '04, and I'm just jumping right into it. So we were on our way to San Diego, and it was during the '04 World Series with the Red Sox trying to end their drought. And I knew about Tessie, and I knew about the Dropkick Murphys being huge baseball nuts. No one else in my van was into baseball, so I didn't get to listen to the games. I didn't get to talk about the games. Found out that they won when we pulled into Vegas for our stay in the hotel that night. Like we debarked the van or whatever, and they were like storming the field. I was like, oh, I literally missed all of it. And we got to San Diego to hook up with Hot Snakes, and I found out that Rick and John and Gar from that band were all giant baseball freaks. So we would just get back in the van, drive to the next town, and I'd go commiserate with them and talk baseball, and then we'd disappear. But like every town, we get to talk a little baseball. It's super fun.
Let's stay on music for a little while longer.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about your music history, because you and I have, I'm sure we have a lot of things in common. I think most importantly, though, we both have songs written about us by the immortal Wesley Willis. We both have our own Wesley Willis songs.
Yeah.
Now, see, I'm cooler because I'm on the indie label. You're on American. You're after Wesley.
I made the big leap. Yeah, and I'm the 13th track, which I've always taken great pride in, and sandwiched between two Beatles songs. I think it's Paul McCartney and Ringo, if I remember right, something like that.
Well, now in this, in my version, you're in between Rock and Roll Power and Helmy on the Bus.
Oh, they may have switched it about then.
They may have.
Oh, know what? I'm thinking he wrote it the night that he wrote the McCartney and Ringo songs, because he was trying to get to the last two living ones at that point.
I haven't looked at my Wesley CDs for a while. Produced by the Dust Brothers.
Yeah.
Just like
no big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your music background in Chicago.
Okay, so I got into punk in about '87, and Minor Threat, and then in Fugazi and Bad Brains, a lot of the DC stuff primarily, and some of the LA stuff, some of the New York stuff, but primarily DC. I was a straight edge punk back then. We would run around Medusas at Belmont and Sheffield, and get into scuffles with the fascist skins and everything. And it was wild, 17 years old, and just having a good time, and we thought doing a good thing, trying to scourge the city of the bad guys. And then started playing music myself. I was in a goofy straight edge band called Yuck Mouth. We had a funny run-in with Gigi Allen up in Muskegon, Michigan. I'll tell you about that one another time. The long story. Then let's see, band called Happy Type, band called Cool Guys Named Steve for one show. Then I started getting serious, and me and my still co-songsmith now, John Scott, started a band called Cinco de Gatos. We did that for a couple of years. This is in the early '90s, long hiatus, and we came back together about 10 years ago for a couple of shows, and now we're back together again, playing in a week and a half, a little live stream thing. So that'll be fun.
I love it. So you can't keep away.
No, and then in between there, played with a band called Red Eyed Legends. Before that, I toured with the Wesley Willis Fiasco started their merchandise guy. And then that was my first time on the road, which is amazing. And by the end of the tour, I was the de facto tour manager and like staying at Jello Biafra's house. No big deal, no big whoop.
Giorgio in the live feed says, we need, all caps, we need that G.G. Allen story. I don't disagree, but let's see how far we get with the Baseball Furies and talking about making a documentary film. And let's start there.
Yeah.
Right from the onset, I said, some people may not realize just how much of an intersection there is between music and baseball. And in the trailer, Ryan Dempster has a great line. I love this. Something along the lines of baseball players want to be rock stars and rock stars want to play baseball.
Yep.
That says it all. I mean, that's pretty much the elevator pitch for the Baseball Furies, isn't it?
Yeah, that is the tagline. He touched on it. It's funny because we've had a number of people since who've said something very similar. Like they're almost reading off of a script. But yeah, it's just like that's kind of what they all figure out. And we've, as you alluded to before, the amount of people we've got is ludicrous. Like, we just started scratching, like I mentioned, it was, Ken Casey with the Dropkick Murphys. And then, we knew that Steve Albini had his team here, the Electrons. And, we're like, okay, let's talk to those guys and let's see how far we can go. And just start digging. And every interview we did, they'd be like, oh, you know who you got to talk to? You got to talk to Mike Mills. And we're like, of course we got to talk to Mike Mills. Why wouldn't we talk to Mike Mills? And they're like, well, if you talk to Scott McCoy, you can get to Mike Mills. We're like, oh. So just kept going and going, and just peeling back the layers and finding new people and just getting to meet, like, my punk rock idols, and, getting to meet Rocky George and talk to him in LA at a chicken house about the Pirates hat. And it's just amazing, mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, you talked to Mike Mills and Peter Buck.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You mentioned Albini. Speaking of Boston, you talked to Letters to Cleo, and then you talked to Buzz you talked to the Melvins, and Rhett Miller from the old 97s, and Mike Patton, Faith No More, etc. I would imagine, I'm not saying anything crazy here, that the Holy Grail is probably Eddie Vedder for this project.
Yeah, Eddie Vedder, we definitely want. We would love to get Geddy Lee. We need to represent our neighbors to the north at some point, and he's the guy. He
loves his Blue Jays.
Yeah, he is the guy. So we've sent out feelers to him. We got a response that was a soft no at the time, but that was when he was at Jeff Tweedy's. He was doing that little thing at the Loft. So it was, just wasn't going to pan out. But he knows that we exist, and that's a good thing.
So I guess what's the status? Where are we at with this? Because I feel like I've heard about this for a while.
Yeah. So we've done more than 80 interviews, which is crazy. We could easily do another 30. I could generate a list tomorrow and have 30 that we would want to talk to. And most of them are people we've at least, scratched the surface on. Status wise, we've got this pile of stuff. We're cutting together stuff. Some of us have full-time jobs. I don't currently. I was laid off during this wonderful COVID thing. But the guys that we have who've shot and edited still need to pay the bills. So we're in the process of cutting things together to pitch to providers and see who bites.
You're going to pitch it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We are going to pitch it. There it is.
Like a damn baseball.
Either 2-seam, 4-seam, maybe a slide piece. We'll see.
Excellent. All right. So things are definitely moving.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like the people we've talked to, it's like we're in a really good situation because we have a pile of footage. We don't have to go shoot anything. We can, or we could do like this, like so many people are doing. We could get Eddie Vedder to zoom in with us. And I think people would be forgiving that it doesn't fit the style, with the rest of the piece. But, hell, people would do cartwheels to see some of the interviews we've got.
Well, I think everyone loves a good sports documentary.
Yeah.
Everyone loves a good rock documentary. Hey, how about that? It's the best of both. It's the best of both. It's so funny. Truly, you could end up talking to hundreds of people, because I like how you said you talk to one person. Oh, you should talk to blank. I've had similar experiences with different projects I've worked on, and your only limitation is really time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure you'd love to do everything, fly off to here and there, talk to everybody, but it's a grind.
Oh
It's
yeah.
so much work booking, confirming, getting in place, getting the crew, whatever. I mean, you could be working on this for 15 years, but at some point
Oh yeah.
you need to call it.
Like ideally what we would love to do is have this, we've pivoted to making it into an episodic show, for a Netflix or a Hulu or whoever, has the, the sense to pick us up and give us the platform. But so we've started cutting it into like thematic, episode ideas, like, a San Francisco versus Oakland one, and then, a Chicago South Side and a North Side, a Boston, a Evil Yankees, a ladies episode. So it's really cool, and like people can get into one episode and maybe not be into the Cubs episode, but then come back for the Boston or whatever, so grab them and keep them, and then roll that into another season and just say, hey, give us some more money and we'll just keep making these for a couple of years, because there's a lot of people that want to talk.
I'm sure you've asked this of so many of your interview subjects. I'll ask you, what is it about baseball?
So in my mind, and I found like most of the people agree with this, it's that nostalgia thing. It's like going out there the first time. 80% of the people we've talked to have said at some point you walk up the corridor that first time and you see that green and it just overwhelms you, and you'll never forget it, and you always like are waiting for it when you get back to the park for the first time that year, to walk up and see that green just rise in front of you, and then the smells and the sounds and BP's going on, hot dogs, and some yelling, some cursing, whatever, all those elements that make it just magic. And it's that's what it was for me, like remembering going to games with with my folks and my grandpa and stuff like that, and then good, all that stuff, it just comes flooding back.
I was going to say, I think for a lot of people, baseball is those family memories that
Mhm.
that exciting. I'm going on a trip with my grandparents or my parents into the city or into the ballpark, and it was
Mhm.
a thrill. And oh my God, there are so many people here, and it's loud and it's fun, and everyone's in a good mood, and
Yeah,
it really is just a warm, comforting feeling, and you keep flashing back to it every time you walk through the gates.
yeah, absolutely. And like the funniest people, like when Mike Patton comes in, and I don't know if you've ever spoken to Mike Patton.
I have. I think he's amazing.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He's such a talent, and like so like just tendrils in all directions of like what he can do. And he's a notorious tough interview. And we reached out to Mike Borden first, who is a great big softie and just wanted to talk about baseball. And initially he's like, don't bother with Pat, and he's kind of tough. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's cool. And then the day we were about to, or the day before we left for San Francisco, the woman who put us in touch with Borden is like, I'll get you Pat, and just pick a place and time and we'll get him there. And I was like, okay. He shows up, and he calls me from, we're at this bar, and wow, crap, what was it called? It's a Giants bar in San Fran, and I cannot remember the name of it, and I'm going to be in trouble. But he calls me from the front of the room, and he's like, hey, it's Mike, I'm here. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And he comes back, gives me a big hug, which was surprising. And he goes, look, I don't like doing interviews. I'm like, well, that's the beauty of this, is we're just going to talk baseball. I'm not going to ask you about, Mr. Bungle or, Fat Tomas or anything like that. Let's just talk baseball. And he's like, okay, cool. And it just went from there. And then we finished interviewing him. And at the end, I'm like, okay, I got to go feed the meter. I'll be right back. He's like, can I just hang out? Like, yeah, absolutely. So I go feed the meter. I come back, and he's got, him and Borden had been tweeting each other texting each other back and forth like forever about funny old timey baseball players named like Old Horse Radbourne and Oil Can Boyd and stuff like that. And they would just like send a new name, and he's just showing us this list. He's scrolling through. I'm like, yeah, you're our guy. You're our people.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a really great interview experience with him. I feel like he might be one of those guys who has people around him that kind of weed out the people who shouldn't get near him.
Yeah.
Like it's like a protective layer, but once you get to him, he's an all right dude.
Yeah, he was bubbling over. He was so happy to like talk about the subject we were, rapping about. It was great, And I think that's another thing about it too, is it's, if you're a baseball fan and someone starts talking to you about baseball, even if it's a total D-bag, you're probably still going to connect a little bit and have a fun conversation, even for a couple minutes. So like with people, us kind of disaffected musical, miscreants that roamed around forever thinking no one liked us. And then we find others that like baseball too. And it's like, holy crap, we can just talk about this stuff forever.
I like that you include, because you're a Chicago guy, you've got
Mhm.
local media personalities. Steve Dahl was an obvious one,
Mhm.
I think, to talk to because of his history. And he's a Sox fan for life. I mean,
Oh
that
yeah.
dude.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had I had met him very briefly after a, Steve and Teenage Radiation played, was it right after a Chicago Sting game at the old Chicago Stadium, I think it was. And my dad took me up. I was like 12, and he took me up to meet him up from the upper deck, and that was my prior instance to meeting him. But I'd always wanted to like sit and talk to him about something, and especially Disco Demolition and just his love of baseball. And what a great interview, and so generous with his time. And like another one where we just hung out afterwards, and he like showed us his collection of stuff, and he could have talked for days. Good
Yeah,
guy.
he's one of the funniest dudes I've ever met.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
Lynn Bramer, no secret there, huge baseball fan.
Oh yeah. Doesn't
Um,
hide it.
Matt Spiegel, obviously, from the world of sports talk radio. I mean, you
Mhm.
got the right people talking about this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like it's not, it hasn't been lucky because we have like busted our asses to get these people, but
Booking
like,
guests is hard. Booking interviews is
oh
hard
yeah,
work.
it is. And like, I've done the majority of it, which is fun because that's, kind of what I like doing, is just, grinding it and getting them. And it's so exciting to like, get someone locked in. And, like when you hear about, oh yeah, we're going to get, Rocky George. And it's like, oh man, you hear that cha-ching. It's just like, that's the coolest thing. That's who we've been wanting, and it's just, that's a blast. And then you go and meet them, and it's just ridiculous. So cool.
So heading into the project, you had a story that you wanted to tell. You
Mhm.
had a clear vision of what Baseball Furies would be.
Yes.
Have you learned anything new in the process? Has this gone in directions that weren't expected when you set out?
um, yeah, like here and there, I guess, but the thing we've been most surprised about is like that, like the legion that is there of baseball fan music dorks, because like the initial premise was, okay, so we were all, like if we were to write a script about this, the story arc is, it's like we're 7 years old, we go to our first baseball game with our folks, whatever, fall in love with it, and we play some little league. And then at 14, 15, we start skating, and then getting into punk rock music. And then all of a sudden in high school, we're getting beat up by the jocks. We don't want to associate with them anymore. um Getting that first hardcore band, play our asses off, go on tour. And then at some point, the drummer says to the guitarist, hey, you like baseball? And they start talking baseball, and then boom, they're going to games again at 27, and then falling back in love. So we didn't realize that there was going to be 80 plus people that had that same experience, or something really similar to it. And it's just what we keep finding over and over. And like, all those guys that you don't think would ever, recover from, getting swirlies from the 6'7" starting pitcher of their high school team. It like he's still back going to games. He's going to get going to get Carlton Fisk's autograph at the Donald E. Stevens, or
Mm-hmm.
something.
Here's my concern. My concern is that this will finally see release once things become safer and people are allowed out of the house again. I
Mhm.
worry that this will keep people indoors if it comes out after the pandemic wraps up.
It'll give us a moment, some time to wean ourselves back into normal life.
Maybe that's it. Maybe this is how we work ourselves back into the general population.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, it'd be great if this came out, just before, or like spring training time, and like, you could watch some episodes, and well, the games are hopefully starting up and roll right into opening day, and get everyone fueled up and ready to go.
Well, I think this is such an exciting idea, and everyone I've talked to about this said, "Oh my God, I would watch that in a heartbeat," and we will. So
Yeah,
I'm really excited for you to kind of take this over the finish line, so we can all enjoy it at home. I know how much work this has to be, and I think it's super cool that you've been doing it.
I'm a strong-willed man. I will. This is the one I will force into reality. No problem. I promise.
Well, again, you are Jason Dummeldinger. The movie or the documentary is Baseball Furies, and we will be looking for that sooner than later.
Awesome. Thanks, James.